Alright guys, kamusta naman kayo dyan? Sabi ko bago tayo maano ng jet lag natin dyan, let's get this out of our system at mahirap talaga pag yung time zone natin ay medyo hindi naman Southern Europe, medyo Eastern Europe naman, but nevertheless, sabi ko let's get this going before we proceed to the next phase of the day dito. So katulad ng sinabi natin isang araw, we're here for some, I would say, important meetings. Kasama dyan, oops, meron pa lang ano dito. Hindi, paano naging private account? Is it? No, 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 hindi pwede without public account lang. No, that was correct. It's in public account. Namat na ito. Huwag kasi kayo makialam. Ah, no, it was in public account. 1 second. Alright guys, sorry. We have to be back. Yan kasi bago kayo maghanas dyan, siguro yung tama yung sinasabi, nasa public account tayo kanina. Anyway, let's get back to this. Before jet lag sets in and all of that, sabi ko nga katulad ng sinabi natin na yung latest trip natin ngayon ay, syempre the other month we were in London, we were in Paris, we got to meet officials there in the foreign ministry. Also, we visited Budapest and met a couple of experts there to discuss infrastructure, connectivity, among other things. Ngayon naman, dito tayo sa Poland. And as I said, Poland is a very interesting case because by every metric, Poland is the most successful European country, at least over the past 20, 30 years, in terms of catching up, in terms of economic modernization, fastest level of average economic growth. We're looking at 4 to 5% average growth rate over 2 decades, which is one of the fastest in Europe, especially in basically in the last 50 years. I don't think there have been many countries who have experienced this kind of growth rate. But more importantly, guys, pagdating sa Poland also, we're talking about a country na increasingly emerging as a major military power. Nakikita natin dito sa Poland that they're investing huge amounts. So kanina, we had a conversation with the Minister of Foreign Affairs. We were also in the parliament, sa Polish parliament, visited both the Senate and the lower house and the Congress. Binisita din natin a leading think tank attached to the foreign ministry. So over the past 3 years alone, Poland has spent more than $100 billion in terms of their military capabilities in light of yung nangyari dyan sa neighboring Ukraine. So Ukraine is just very much near to us, and unfortunately, tuloy-tuloy pa rin yung laban sa Ukraine, and the horror and the scorched earth tactics of the Putin regime is still going on. So even though Poland is a country that is barely above 20 million people, just under 30 million people, the amount of money they're spending on their defense is staggering. But hindi lang ito kasi gastos, hindi lang sila nag-order right and left. They're building their own capabilities. So pagdating sa cybersecurity, pagdating sa electronics warfare, pagdating sa drones, Poland is already an emerging superpower. Pagdating naman sa the assembling of advanced weapon systems, including Black Hawk helicopters, Poland is one of the biggest in the world. In fact, tayo sa Pilipinas, we imported more than I think 2 dozen Black Hawk helicopters from Poland. Anyway, so it was in the context of that, and of course, after also yung interview natin with Foreign Minister Sikorski, former Defense Minister also Sikorski, sa Manila the other year, dun sa show natin, The View from Manila, we had conversation that maybe it's time for me to visit here with a couple of other good friends from the Philippines who are experts in this field and who are influential in shaping policy discourse sa ating bansa. So that was a context of being here, in visiting here in Poland and having interesting discussion. And so far, I've been very encouraged by the conversation. At least I think we're increasingly going from getting to know each other phase of kamusta naman dyan sa Pilipinas, kamusta naman dyan sa Poland, into ano naman talagang pwede natin gawin and how can we build on the momentum that we have in our bilateral relationship. I think I've heard things along the lines of visa restrictions, or actually, visas are gonna be more flexible. So siguro yung mga Pilipino na gusto mag-turista or even magtrabaho dito, even though medyo humihigpit na ang immigration laws dito sa Poland, of course, because of the conservative party's influence in the Law and Justice Party. Nevertheless, mukhang bukas na bukas sila to, mga katulad ng mga Pilipino, because we are seen as, kind of a model minority. Extremely important yung contribution natin, yung nurses natin, doctors natin, IT people natin, very, very important para sa kanila yon. So they're very much interested in expanding that people-to-people relationship with us. But of course, they're also very much interested in expanding their defense cooperation sa Pilipinas. And in fairness naman sa kanila, we have heard nothing but expression of solidarity with the Philippines pagdating dun sa West Philippine Sea issues. In the same way na yung Poland ay nagre-resist ng Russia and bullying of Russia and Russia's kinetic actions and aggressive actions against neighboring Ukraine. Increasingly, they also see us as a very important country with respect to China, China's bullying of Taiwan, China's aggressive actions in the West Philippine Sea. So we see a lot of commonalities there. As you know, I mean, Poland is a country that has very tragic, melancholic, traumatic history. Arguably, my favorite pianist, Chopin. Dad French, but mom Pole, and very much a son of Poland. Very much revered, artist in human history. So kahapon we had the chance to go to this park, this beautiful park, national park nila, kung saan there's this statue of Chopin under a weeping willow, and there was one Chopin piano contest champion who was there and played it, and it was amazing to see hundreds and if not thousands of people just sitting in the park and listening to classical piano and moment of, I would say, artistic reverence, if not nationalistic fervor, which is something beautiful to behold. Statues of Copernicus, remembrances and emblems of Pope John Paul II. I mean, amazing people have hailed from this beautiful land of Poland, and I was very impressed to see such a clean, progressive city. Very warm people, very kind people. Of course, Catholic also like Filipinos, majority Catholic like Filipinos, and also democracy. And speak of democracy, you see, one thing I always found interesting also with Poland is katulad natin, their domestic politics is very, very polarized. As you may know, yung recently lang nagkaroon sila ng elections, and dito sa latest elections nila, in fact, what happened in that election was that it went down almost 49-51. Like just a couple of 100,000 votes separated the winning candidate from the losing candidate. It was a race between actually two very young men. The mayor of Warsaw, the more liberal Europe-leaning candidate who also ran in the past, and this time was really a front runner heading into the second round. But the other side was a former historian, a museum historian, a guy in his early 40s, very strongly MAGA, major MAGA adjacent, very pro-Trump, pro-US, critical of liberal Europe, etc. And it was a very contentious race, no? And basically 50-50 yung split sa kanilang bansa. And kanina lang we were having conversation with a couple of parliamentarians who come from different political parties, the two competing parties, including also someone from a third party, younger party, someone na mukhang regular din sa Siargao daw back in the day. Alam na alam daw na yung mga kagandahan ng mga isla natin sa Pilipinas. So, it was a very interesting discussion because, and this is why it's relevant dun sa sinasabi natin, although domestically very polarized yung mga discussions dito, although domestically may mga major policy contentions, hindi naman daw suntukan na nangyari dun sa kanilang kongreso, pero quite pitched the fights, rhetorical fights and contentious fights. Despite their very strong disagreements on issues of immigration, on issues like divorce, on issues like LGBT rights, on really a whole host of identitarian issues. The fact of the matter is that what I found very interesting with Poland is that even if nag-aaway yung mga partido very passionately, In fact, sabi nga nung isang parliamentarian, brutal rhetoric ang ginagamit. In fact, recently daw, there was this huge controversy kasi grabe daw ang pagbubuli doon sa anak nung kasalukuyan ng presidente. Gen Z, batang-bata yung anak niya, and sobrang binubuli ng ano. So what happened was that yung different parties, including competing parties, had to come together and issue a joint statement and say, hey, stop this bullying. This is not how we do politics. Ko, marahas. Hindi naman level na marahas katulad natin na yung vice presidente tinitreaten to kill and assassinate the president, joke daw or no joke daw, whatever it is. Not as bad, but pretty bad, no? And very, very divided yung bansa nila, like basically 50-50, no? In fact, there was one town in, I think, South uh, West Poland, whereby one vote separated the winner from the loser. Ganon ka split exactly almost in the middle yung isang syudad, no, dito sa Poland. So it's a very contentious, very fraught, sometimes even rhetorically brutal, if not more dangerous, kind of tension sa pagitan ng mga iba't ibang partido dito. But, and this is the big difference, guys, but pagdating sa foreign policy, pagdating sa national security and national interest nila, dito makikita mo talaga na may unity sila. May unity sila. And that was something that really encouraged me. So basically on questions of Russia and threats from Russia, and the need for Poland to be part of NATO or strengthen its defense capabilities and to be prepared, to prepare its population against disinformation, to fight back against hacking, to fight back against economic coercion, to push for energy diversification, bring in more wind farms. On matters of rearmament, with Poland really spending close to 5% of its gross domestic product on defense, way ahead of all the major European countries. On that, meron silang national unity. Right? So, grabe yung away sa loob pagdating sa mga iba't ibang polisiya. In fact, as one parliamentary senior, very senior parliamentarian put it kanina, hindi na ang debate ngayon ay hindi na policy, talagang parang almost identity na, personality based na. So, medyo nasty, katulad natin. Hindi masyadong iba. But, what is the difference here? The difference is that pagdating sa foreign policy, national interest, ano yung mga kailangan gawin ng Poland to protect itself, its territorial integrity, to hold its own and to hold the line and to guard the barracks basically and hold the fort basically, doon meron silang national unity. So there's this distinction about national interest and then how domestic issues have to be handled. And they're doing that in spite of the fact that there's constant disinformation coming in, influence operation coming in, pressure coming in. And it's interesting that despite the fact that also they have this very contentious domestic politics, there's tremendous amount of democratic freedom, at least compared to what you would expect or you would see in neighboring Hungary, for instance, yung isang bansa na binisita lang natin yung isang buwan. But nevertheless, I mean, all of our EU members, so there's very high level of political freedom, at least relative to the rest of the world. And that is where I would say, unfortunately, iba talagang Pilipinas. Because sa atin, hindi lang brutal yung rhetorical, well, actually, yung one side is sobrang brutal, which is, binabastos yung presidente, bangag daw, nagko-call basically for military coup, napakabastos, tapos yung anak niya, sinasabi nito, sige, ano yung, pa-assassinate daw, yung mga ganon. That in itself is bad enough, not to mention really many kinds of rhetoric and actions na clearly bordering on destabilization, to use the favorite term of the Dutertes when they're in power, in order to shut down any kind of even mild and legitimate criticism. But honestly, in many ways, you can say they're the one doing destabilization. But you see, one big difference, an unfortunate difference we have sa Pilipinas kumpara sa mga ibang bansa katulad ng Poland, is that even though their democracy is very young, even though they're a post-communist state, even though they're just right next to a superpower that can bully them and pressure them and etc., at least pagdating sa national interest, wala silang, there's no daylight. I mean, or at least, some differences on tactics. One is leaning more on the European common defense policy versus, leaning more on the Trump side of the equation, US. Yeah, but those are tactical differences. But in terms of strategic vision of what is needed for Poland, what is the national interest, kanina, I literally saw 3 different parliamentarians from 3 different parties next to each other very much interested in developing relationship with the Philippines. Imagine like someone from PDP Laban, of Sara, next to someone from Martin Romualdez, I don't know, Lakas, and then someone from, I don't know, Pink, let's say Akbayan, for instance. Can you imagine that? Like someone from Akbayan, someone from Lakas Sport, and someone from PDP Laban, all next to each other, and saying, yes, we have all of these disagreements, but pagdating sa West Philippine Sea, pagdating sa pangailangan ng ating bansa, pagdating sa mga bagay na kailangan natin gawin para palakasin yung ating sandatahang lakas, yung ating kapasidad para protektahan yung ating karagatan, yung West Philippine Sea, pagdating sa ganun, no debates. And anong mga kailangan natin gawin para palakasin natin yung strategic autonomy ng ating bansa, para maging maunlad yung ating bansa, para mas marami tayong makuha mga trade agreements, investments, etc. At para natin protektahan yung core sovereignty natin, para natin protektahan ang sarili natin from disinformation, malign influence operations, sharp power, whatever you want to call it. On that, suddenly there's complete unity on that. And yun yung unfortunate kulang sa atin. Because sa atin, there's basically two problems. There are basically two problems, right? Or the problem is twofold. Sa isang banda, yung unity na meron tayo was purely tactical and alliance of inconvenience, I would say. From the very beginning, alam natin, the whole Sara Duterte Marcos thing was, to put it honestly, was a Machiavellian tactical kind of alliance. But really, what is more worrying sa akin, at ito yung talagang nakakalungkot sa atin, is yung away din ng mga kampo sa Pilipinas, and let's be honest, mga Duterte versus basically the government, said, there's no common understanding of the national interest. I mean, just pakinggan mo lang yung mga sinasabi ni Sara Duterte about West Philippine Sea, or mga hindi sinabi ni Sara Duterte about West Philippine Sea. Worse, pakinggan mo yung mga sinasabi ni Digong, and sometimes yung mga kanyang factotum like Robin Hood Padilla, whatever, ukol sa West Philippine Sea. My goodness, nasaan yung national interest dyan? Parang minsan tayo pang sinisisi pag may nangyari. Parang kasalanan pa natin na nabubuli tayo sa West Philippine Sea. You see, that is a big no-no in a country like Poland. Even though nag-disagree yung mga different parties, if someone goes out there and says, oh hindi, bakit tayo nagganon? Kasalanan natin kaya ginano ng Russia ang Ukraine, or gaganin tayo ng Russia. Nako, yari ka, tapos ka. Tapos ng career mo. Or worse. Sa atin, the fact na you have some people who even dare or have the temerity to blame the Philippine Coast Guard, to question our own valiant efforts to protect our interests, bubulin yung mga katulad ng mga top officials na lumalaban sa West Philippine Sea, babastusin sila, my goodness, ke horror. That's a big no in any self-respecting mature democracy or mature country per se. Like, good luck. Like, if you're in China or in Vietnam, imagine you say things na, ay, kasalanan natin China kasi bully tayo. Or kasalanan natin sa Vietnam kasi bully tayo, hayaan na natin kunin ng China. Alam mo yung ganyan, sabihin mo, yayarin ka talaga doon. Kaya dun sa mga ka-DDS natin na vlogger na iba, doon na kayo sa China. Tignan natin, ano. But anyway, joking aside, yun yung nakakalungkot sa atin, guys. Yun yung nakakalungkot sa na either complete lack of patriotic positioning, ang daming sobrang etchosera tong MVP natin pagdating sa issue ng mga giyera sa kung saan-saan sa mundo, yung mga Afghan refugees na dumaan sa Pilipinas. Ang daming sinasabi, pero pagdating sa West Philippine Sea, wala siyang sasabihin. And after 3 years, ang sasabihin lang niya is parang neutral na lang tayo. As if, ay, parang kung may neutral, binubuli ka nga, binabastos ka nga, kinukuha na nga yung karagatan mo, prevent ka nga from developing your energy resources. So you see, that is the insane situation we're facing kung saan, unfortunately, hindi lang yung away is domestically between different political parties or different dynasties. Oh, and by the way, hindi dynastic yung politics dito sa Poland, for instance. Awayan ito ng mga partido at mga personalities, but not dynasties. And speaking of dynasties, I mean, ke horror. Nakita niyo ba si Rodrigo Duterte II, yung bagong vice mayor dyan sa Davao? Diyos ko, kailangan pa ng kodigo daw para alam niya kailangan niya ganin yung hammer, ano pang sasabihin niya. I mean, tapos sasabihin nila, hindi sila dynasty or trapo. I mean, it's crazy. It's just crazy. I mean, I'm all for understanding historical injustices against Mindanao, and I've mentioned that, and unfortunately, na-twist yung sinabi natin and all of this fake news and all of that. And still, in the spirit of magnanimity, I said, okay, apologetic tayo for any unintended hurt and etc. But, like, honestly, is this what some folks want? I mean, for some very developed, highly developed cities, yes, very high human developed cities, tapos ganyan yung mga liderato na meron sa pare-paras ng pangalan, para-paras na tao, yung mayor na pinili pa nila, cardboard pa, work from Hague. I mean, and then pagdating sa West Philippines yan, national interest natin, anong pang narinig na? Ako, dapat ang debate natin is, ano dapat yung level ng cooperation natin sa Amerika para siguraduhin natin na hindi tayo dependent on US or over-dependent on US. Alam niyo naman, open din ako sa aking mga kritisismo, ating mga concerns sa Trump administration or US in general. Yes, agree ako dyan. What I do not agree with is yung iba talaga obviously pro-China, at ang ginagawa lang nila is ine-echo lang nila yung talking points ng Chinese Embassy para lang i-question yung US para actually i-prevent tayo from developing the kind of alliances that could be important for us to develop our own capabilities to hold our own in the West Philippines Sea. Kumbaga, hindi ito mga genuine na tao na, kasi kung ikaw ay genuinely pro-Philippines at na-criticize mo ang US or yung relasyon natin sa US, wala akong problema dyan. We have been making arguments about unreliability of allies, kakulangan ng ating allies, given yan. Pero nung ang gagawin mo lang, you are just a channel for pro-China talking points, ay walang ano to, malaking problema yan. Banana Republic tayo niyan kung ganun. Diba? And of course, this thing is important, again, on two levels. A, simply because, wag natin kalimutan, you know, we can criticize BBM on so many levels, whether yung sa mga economic policy, 20 peso kada kilo na pangako na ng bigas. We can talk about, all sorts of different shortcomings of the administration. But in fairness, pagdating sa West Philippine Sea, I think makikita mo, even yung mga ibang dilawan, or at least yung mga pink na patriotic, ay sabi na, in fairness naman kay BBM, at least on the West Philippine Sea issue, at least on even increasing on the ICC issue, I mean, there's this feelers being sent na hindi lang tayo nag-cooperate on the handing over of a fugitive to ICC, but we can also maybe cooperate on on Bato, or maybe we'll cooperate in terms of helping the witnesses, etc. And also, who knows, maybe we'll also rejoin the ICC, etc. So at least that's one of the things that BBM got right. Not to mention the statesmanship, the level of respectability, the level of, I would say, sanity that he brings into our discussion. Yes, hindi siya exciting istorya style ni Digong, na hindi siya nagpapatawa, ganun. Yes, he's nowhere as charismatic, etc. But at least he got this point right. But my point is, no matter how well BBM wants to do, assuming he's really doing it really from his heart, etc., hindi niya magawa yung kailangan niyang gawin para sa ating bansa, and of course for his own legacy, as long as tuloy-tuloy itong destabilization laban sa kanya. Tuloy-tuloy yung pangbabastos, tuloy-tuloy yung sending of, mixed signals. Like, I mean, sobrang nakakaya when internationally narinig nila ginugulo tayo ng mga to, kung ano yung sinasabi sa presidente, binabastos yung presidente, nag-deepfake sa presidente, yung mga ganyan. That doesn't help the country. It actually brings down the country. It brings down the country. It affects the ability of the president to focus on issues he has to focus on. It affects the ability of the Philippines to project a united, strong position internationally. And then meron ka pang mga ibang mga dayuhan, tatanungin nila, which is the second part of the problem, ano naman mangyari sa ating bansa pag bumalik mga Dutertes? Let's say Sara Duterte won, or someone from the DDS camp becomes the next president. What's gonna happen to the country? So yung ibang bansa na actually gusto mag-invest sa atin strategically and literally also invest sa atin economically, infrastructure development-wise, sasabihin nila, well, if 2 years na lang si BBM or 3 years na lang si BBM and then babalik na mga Duterte, ano naman mangyari sa lahat ng mga cooperation natin? Baka mamaya itapon nila lahat ng ano, tapos gusto nila mag pro-China na naman or pro-Russia, even worse, which for the year. Do you get what I'm saying? So this is the kind of situation we're facing right now, which is, unfortunately, yung domestic political fights natin ay hindi natin mahihiwalay doon sa ating foreign policy, right? And matters of national interest. So in short, yung mga domestic fight, and we know destabilization is coming really from one side of the equation here. I mean, as far as BBM is concerned, napaka-conflict avoidant ito. At if it were up to him, siguro he would have tried to avoid any showdown with Duterte as much as possible and just smoothly go through it and then, okay, Sara, bahala ka na 2028. But let me just have at least my time while I'm still the president. But no eh. Hindi talaga eh. Ayaw talaga pumayag eh. Talagang gusto nila na sila lang talaga. And you can see talaga the level of entitlement, etc. Even if nasa naman ang competence. Worst ever DepEd secretary. I mean, like not even... Anyway, what I'm saying this is, problema to. Problema sa ating bansa yan. This, basically salot sila sa ating national interest. And the problem is that they actually gaslight everyone else. everyone else that tries to point out what is our national interest, oh, ano ka, tuta ka ng US, when in fact sila yung tuta ng China. Anyone who has to come in and try to say, oh, kailangan natin ng guardrails para walang disinformation. Oh, kayo po ay against freedom of expression. Wait, last time I checked, nung nasa poder kayo, excited kayo to shut down everyone. In fact, interestingly, ito nga, vice-presidente pa lang, inaaway na si Karen Davila dahil lang may sinabing ganito, ganyan, doon sa interview ni Carranza. Imagine mo kung naging presidente. So, yun ang problema natin, guys. Not to mention the level of clownery, buffoonery that we're seeing in the Senate by some of these people who obviously have no business being in elected office, especially an elected office in such an august, supposedly august institution. People who have no competence whatsoever, proven track record, yung iba ex-convict pa nga, who have no right whatsoever to be even near any institution that is self-respecting and is in charge of doing important things. So yun po yung nakakalungkot sa ating bansa, guys. And something has to be done about that. Something has to be done about that. But more importantly, we have to put it into context. Whatever we're losing, whatever reputational damage we're suffering, whatever instability and destabilization that is there or seemingly there, whatever turn-off element that is there that is keeping away other countries from investing economically and strategically in us for long term, alam natin saan galing mo yan eh. Ito yung galing sa isang entitled dynasty, which some would say never had the competence and the kind of ethical leadership that befits any self-respecting democracy, especially at the national level. No offense. And this is the serious problem we have right now, guys. This is really the serious problem we have. And that's why I'm saying I hope people realize we're not in this normal personality A versus personality B, or lahat naman sila team kadiliman, team kasamaan. We can make all of those jokes, or we can all go back to all of those cliches and all. But I hope people understand, guys, the stakes is really, really high here. Kaya nga sabi ko, people have to understand sinong number one threat sa ating national interest and constitutional order. And number two, guys, yes, yung third force, we need a third force, a real third force na mga progressives, mga liberals, at yung mga tao na naniwala sa demokrasya. But more important, at least para sa akin, naniwala sa isang mas capable, mas prosperous Philippines at saka mga tao na makabayan, talagang naniwala sa interes ng ating bayan, hindi lang interes ng kanilang kapogo or or gusto maging province ng ibang bansa, hindi yung ganyan. So I'm all for criticizing the US, criticizing our level of dependence on the US, or what to do, what not to do. 100% agree with that. What I cannot agree with are this Mickey Mouse analyst and ito mga fake na kunyari pa-nationalista effect. But at the end of the day, they're just doing the talking points of a country that wants to gusto niyang sakupin yung ating karagatan at saka bullying yung ating mga mangingista even more and more, right? So this is what I'm talking about, guys. You have to make a clear distinction about what BBM represents and what the other side of the equation represents. None of them are ideal, 100%. But there are levels to this game. There's a purgatorio, there's a seventh circle of hell. That's very clear distinction. But number two, this is why kailangan din talaga, guys, magkaroon tayo ng third force. Magkaroon tayo ng alternatibo, no? Isang kilusan na walang katrapuhan, or at least minimize yung katrapuhan, walang dynasties involved, or hindi, kontrolado ng isang conglomerate or isang pamilya na bilyonaryo na mahilig mag land grab or kung ano-ano. That's very important, 100% very important. And also isang kilusan na may ideya, may puso, may vision, no, ng anong kayang gabi ng Pilipinas para maging isang major force in the region and beyond in the 21st century. Kasi kayang-kaya natin yan as the 13th largest country by population, by some estimates, soon one of the top 25 largest economies in the world. Guys, we deserve so much better than the clown show we're getting right now. We deserve so much better, guys. And that's why, guys, I cannot control what's happening with some of our folks who unfortunately mukhang mas kulto ang gusto nila kaysa totoong policy-based politics. Wala tayong mga gawa, wala na yan. Game over na yung mga yan. But for the sake of the rest of the population and for the sake of the country, dapat tuloy-tuloy lang gawin natin in terms of raising public education level, critical thinking, critical feeling, critical patriotism, and also in my own little capacity, go and hate me, go and bash me, whatever you want, as if naman. But at least I'm going all around the world and doing my best to say, please don't overlook the Philippines. This is a country of the future. This is a country that is showing its strength and determination to stand up to bullying in the West Philippine Sea. This is the only ASEAN country that combines elements of liberal democracy and commitment to the rules-based order. And of course, beautiful islands, great people, amazing people, beautiful people. But also economic potentials. All of these things, guys, yung ating economic potential should go to the people. I mean, we missed the upper middle income status by just what, $28, $27, whatever, 23, 20 something, just less than $30. But that's not the point. My point is we could be so much better if instead of corruption and instead of instability, instead of all of this trapo, walang kwentang mga pamilya na who are trying to control our country as if they're fiefdom, if we had more people of competence, hindi kailangan genius level, even if just basic competence and basic determination, okay na tayo. And that's exactly the context within which noong isang araw, sabi ko, kudos kay Mayor Lenny Robredo na first day pa lang niya, ang dami niyang ginawa. Yes, these are the very basics, absolutely. Yung regularization ng mga workers sa City Hall, yung mga good governance initiative, no confidential fund. Yes, for a lot of people correctly, that those are the minimum you would expect in any real democracy. I mean, tingnan mo yung mga prime minister sa Sweden, sa Netherlands, kaya nagbabicycle lang, nagka-commute lang. So, gets ko yan. But you see, things are so bad because of this salot na mga trapos and all of that, na even doing the basics is transformational. You know, in times of trouble, even normal acts are revolutionary. That's the basic reality we're facing right now. And then meron pa yung mga isang analyst na kunyari pa analyst pa kunyari may survey agency pa yung pala DDS analyst lang naman at hanggang SMNI International lang naman yung level niya. Tas bitter na bitter dun sa iba na actually may global profile, may global respect sabi and may actual global publications, but whatever. You see these clowns, whether in the Senate, whether outside the Senate, yung mga iba desperado to be I mean, Nyamat na ito eh. Nyamat na ito. Salat na mga to. Anyways, guys, what I'm saying is we can do better than that. But the courageous thing to do right now is we keep on going. We keep on showing to the world that we Filipinos can do better. We are doing better and we'll keep on doing better in spite of the horrible dynastic salot people we have. But at one point, guys, we also have to make sure yung mga salot na yan no longer in charge of our institutions of governance. But at least we have the minimally competent people. And that's why, yes, what Lenny did on the first day was not transformational by global standards, but unfortunately, dahil sa sobrang baba ng standards ng government sa ating bansa, it is doing normal things, basic things, is transformational in an age of katrapuhan and salot dynasties and all of that. So that's the context of our intervention. And when people try to put Lenny down or question people who are actually highlighting what Lenny is doing, these people have to be called out, especially mga pretentious dyan na mga DDS SMNI level lang na analyst. Anyway, on that note, thank you very much, guys. I know it's quite late there in the sa Pilipinas, but thank you sa lahat ng mga followers natin here from Europe, from US, and from all around the world, from Saudi Arabia, from Gitnang Silangan, of course, favorite time ko yan, Gitnang Silangan, and of course from across the country who have been there with us. I really appreciate. As I said, hindi naman tayo high-level production, like na first-level journalist katulad ng mga kabilang channel. Wala naman tayong merch. Wala pang merch. Sorry, medyo na-late tayo because I'm just so busy and all. But at least one thing I try to bring you guys here is some level of global perspective and some idea of what the Philippines can become and also some ray of hope actually there, and more than a ray of hope actually, in spite of all of this horrible dynastic politics and salad. Imagine how far we have come as a country, and I wouldn't have been invited all around the world and meet officials and foreign ministers and leaders and even prime ministers and presidents kung hindi sila believe sa Pilipinas, because I go all around speaking about the potential of our country and potential of cooperating with this country. So on that note, maraming salamat. God bless. Hopefully, Medyo tricky schedule rin ngayon because of the time difference, but I'm hoping to have some of our academic friends and colleagues na babalikan natin yung mga issues, mga kailangan natin ng gawin over the coming years. And whether we like BBM or not, we need that guy to do his job well so that we can get things across the line. And hopefully, he will do something more drastic and more important on important issues katulad ng whether it's 20 peso kada kilo na bigas or at least making it more affordable. And then also on issues of accountability na ICC and all, and then getting things across the line pagdating sa West Philippine Sea issue. On that note, maraming salamat. God bless and talk to you soon. Ay, hindi pala iPad to. Kailangan ko i-press. Thank you very much, guys. Maraming salamat and thank you